Welcome back. This is episode 34 of the Knighton Runs podcast. And if you've been wondering where I've been for the past couple of months, well, I've been here. I just decided to take a little bit of a break from recording the podcast weekly after the marathon season had winded down for my athletes. This winter, I've been working on some different projects. I started coaching high school track and field in December, and it's been really, really fun working with about 20 different girls there as they prepare for a weekly race, sometimes even twice a week in the middle distance events 600 meters, 800, 1,000, 15, and 3K. Also working a bit with our sprinters. My wife Erica has been taking the lead on training them up. We have some really fast 55-meter dash runners. Their races take like 7 or 8 seconds. It's kind of crazy. And been working a lot with our throwers as well. We have one of the best shot putters in the state on our team. So every day, pretty much, I've been spending a few hours with them. I've also been working with my private athletes in Knighton Runs marathon coaching, getting them through the winter and building a really strong base for a super, super strong spring marathon season. I ran my first race of the year just last weekend, broke 5 in the mile on my first ever indoor track race. I was really, really excited to do that. I love these shorter distance races. I am running the Boston Marathon this year, but I'm training right now more as a miler or a 5K athlete after working on marathon specific training with my own training for about 4 years. It's really fun just to kind of mix things up and focus on some shorter and faster stuff for a bit. And I know that it will only help me in the longer events once I put more priority back onto them in my own training. In today's episode, this is kind of a bonus episode. See, I'll be launching season 3 at some point, but this is a nice little filler. I wanted to talk about the 3 biggest myths in marathoning and put some controversial spins on these things. I'm going to talk a bit about the long run, mileage, and speed, and how all 3 of these things relate to marathoning, and how I think most people have the wrong idea when it comes to these things when they apply marathon training to themselves. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first myth of marathon training, the biggest one that I see, and I'm going to start with this. And if this sounds crazy to you, you can stop listening. But if it doesn't, stay tuned because I got two more myths coming up. All right, so biggest myth, the long run. Way, way overemphasized by most athletes. There's no correlation at all between how many 20 milers you do, 22 milers, 24 milers, and how well you do in your marathon. Let me say that again. You don't have to do a 20 miler. Most people probably shouldn't even do a 20 miler before training for a marathon. I've had both men and women of all different ages, 30s, 40s, and even older, run super strong marathons with no bonk at the end, actually negative splitting the thing and finishing really strong. And they'd never run more than 16 or 18 miles in their buildup, never did a 20 miler. And yet somehow on race day, they were able to run 26.2 miles incredibly fast. On the flip side, I've had athletes basically beg me to give them 2 or 3 20 milers in their buildup. Some people even want more than that. They say, Chris, I don't know how I'm going to run a marathon without doing a 22. And then many times those same athletes hit the wall around mile 16 or 18 and have a really hard last few miles of the race. Personally, I've always done 20 milers in my buildup, and I've bonked pretty hard in about half of my marathons. Running longer long runs is not going to better prepare you for the marathon. What you need to do is run long runs that are appropriate for who you are individually as an athlete. See, I can go personally and run a 20 miler long run in about 2 hours and 15 minutes at a very comfortable pace. Many would say, and I think they're probably right, that 2 hours and 15 minutes is not even long enough actually for me as an athlete to get the best long run in as a marathon. I should probably be going 2 hours and 30 minutes, maybe even up to 3 hours sometimes on my long runs. And for me personally, 3 hours of running, I would come pretty darn close to running 26 miles. I'd probably run about 24, 25. But now that doesn't mean that you should be doing this, because when I'm training for marathons, I'm running like 80 miles a week. My, easy pace is close to 7-minute miles. So if you're like me, you're doing that kind of training, sure, you should do long runs like I am. Those long runs are about 30% of my weekly mileage or less. Sometimes only 25% of my weekly mileage. But let's say you're doing half the amount of running as me. Let's say you're doing 40 miles per week and your easy pace is a 9-minute mile. No way should you be doing 20-mile long runs. You shouldn't be doing half of your weekly mileage in one run. As long as you're running maybe 2 to 3 hours a week in your peak long runs, you're going to be fine. If you run at a slower pace than I just described for myself, a 20-mile long run is going to take you way, way too long. It's going to be way too damaging on your body. You're not going to recover well from it. You're not going to run with good form throughout. And you're putting way too much emphasis on this one particular run. Rather than thinking that you need to be doing 20 milers regardless of who you are as an athlete, just use this rule of thumb. Try not to run over, let's say, 30% of your weekly mileage in your long run. If you're training for the marathon, maybe it's okay to stretch that up to 40%. But even if that only means you're doing a 16 miler as your peak long run, let's say if you're running about 40 miles a week at the max, that is enough. Balance out the workload throughout the week. Have good workouts throughout the week. Have the long run be relative to you and what you need. Have it be 2 to 3 hours at its longest, and you'll be fine. Myth number 2, mileage. You need to be running 50, 60, 70, 80 miles a week to run a strong marathon. And if you're running less than that, you can't do it. This is not true. I think that if you take a good approach to your training and you've had a smart, slow, and progressive buildup through the shorter distances, starting with things like 5K, moving to 10K, moving to half marathon, taking all of those seriously, training well through them, following a good training plan, you can move up to the marathon and do really, really well with as little as 35 to 40 miles per week. Now, I do believe that unless you're able to commit to running, let's say 35 miles per week, ideally 40, don't even bother with trying to run a good marathon. Now, you can absolutely go do one and survive it, finish it, but you're probably not going to run a good one where you hit the pace you want, jump over the wall, and finish strong. But if you're only going into a marathon with like 35 to 40 miles of training per week, if your training was smart, well designed, you spend enough time training, you didn't rush it, and you're going into your marathon healthy and you pace yourself well, fuel right, and have a good day, you can absolutely finish strong, get over the wall. You can even qualify for the Boston Marathon. I've helped several athletes BQ in their first ever marathon, avoid the wall, and they're only doing 35 or 40 miles a week. Now, mileage is very important for the marathon. It's probably one of the most important things, total weekly mileage. So when that athlete goes on to their next season, yeah, I want to encourage them to run more. So I'll say, hey, you did 40 miles last season. This upcoming season, let's try 50. That goes well, and you want to do more. The season after that, let's do 60, and so on until they get to a point with mileage where they just don't want to run anymore. So more mileage is better, absolutely, but it's no guarantee you're not going to hit the wall, and you don't need to do a huge amount to run a good marathon. Like I said before, I usually train 70 or 80 miles a week for my marathons, and I've hit the wall in half of them. I'm a lot faster, largely in part because of how much mileage I do. And if you want to get faster, yes, do more mileage. But just because it's your first marathon and you're only doing 35 or 40 doesn't mean you can't run a great race. Third myth I want to touch on is about speed and this idea that if you want to get faster at the marathon, you should just race and train for marathons over and over and over again and hope that you'll eventually get so fast that you can reach your goal, whether that's Boston qualifier or if you're really fast, Olympic trial standard, or just breaking 4, whatever your goal may be. It's not the best way to get faster. Let's be real. Most people can't run 26 miles, period, without breaking down. So, how are you going to both run 26 miles without breaking down and do it faster by doing it over and over and over again? A lot of marathon training is pretty darn slow. It's just getting comfortable training at this pace that you're going to be holding for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, especially in the later stages of training, the more specific training where you're doing, let's say, 16-mile long run with 10 of those miles at marathon pace. For most people, that's not a super fast run. If you want to get faster, if you have big goals in the marathon, don't just do a bunch of marathons. Take a break. Focus on shorter distances for a while. Take a whole season and focus on shorter distances. Get as fast as you can before going back to the marathon or before running your first marathon. I've been able to help a bunch of athletes qualify for Boston with this very strategy. Let's say you want to run Chicago in the fall of this year, 2022. If you're not fast enough to BQ right now, if you're good, let's say 10 or 20 minutes off, don't do a marathon this spring. Why don't you sign up for a half marathon in April or May? Make that your goal. And rather than busting your ass on super long runs and long tempo workouts all year, focus on some shorter, faster stuff. Do some 5Ks, do some 10Ks, do faster workouts like 4 by a mile at your true lactic threshold, 6 by a half mile at 5K to 10K pace, 10 by 1 minute hard uphill. These are the kind of workouts, when combined with higher volume of running, good recovery, and consistency over time, that are going to get you faster. They're going to get you faster a lot quicker than just going out and doing super long runs at a comfortable pace and doing long tempos. Once you're fast enough to run the time you want to run in the marathon, then you should go back to the marathon. For those who want to do several marathons in a row, yeah, you can absolutely get faster from one to the next. But just keep in mind that when you train for the marathon, you're training for two things at once. You're trying to train your endurance to actually run 20 to 6 miles steadily and not break down, which is super hard. And you're probably simultaneously trying to get faster. So, two different things you're training. If you're training for a half marathon or a 10K, you're also trying to run fast. You're probably trying to run faster. But for, a decently trained athlete who's been in this sport for a while, someone who's not a true beginner, there's no doubt in my mind, and there's probably no doubt in your mind, that you can run 10K or you can run 13 miles. You don't need to worry about that. You can absolutely do it. So really the only thing you're training is your speed. How quickly can you cover those miles? Nobody hits the wall in a 10K. Nobody hits the wall in a half marathon if you did the right training. The marathon's incredibly unpredictable. You can run 100 miles a week or more and still hit the wall at mile 16. You could have done 8 20-milers in your buildup and still have stomach issues or go too fast and hit the wall at mile 20 of your marathon. Just doing long runs is no guarantee you're going to have a great race. Don't overemphasize it. And don't load on mileage just for the sake of mileage. If you're new to marathoning, if you've only done 30 miles in the past in training, you can run a great marathon on 35 or 40. Be reasonable. If that goes well, next season you can do more. But don't just pile on a ton of mileage thinking that's going to make you a better runner. A lot of times it won't. And the last thing is speed. If you want to run a fast marathon, don't just do marathons from season to season to season. If you notice that your times are not improving, that's very likely a big reason why is you're never really working the energy systems and building the body that can run a faster marathon pace for 26 miles. Train speed at shorter distances, then go back to the marathon. So those are my 3 myths. Hope you thought that was interesting. Probably a little controversial there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these points with the long run, mileage, or speed. So feel free to drop a comment in the blog post below. Let me know on Instagram or Facebook your thoughts. This has been Coach Chris from Knighton Runs Marathon Coaching. Thanks for listening. This spring, I'm helping over 25 athletes prepare for the best races of their lives in the 5K, half marathon, and marathon. And I have a couple more spots open for athletes who want to do one on one personal coaching with me. If you're interested in that, shoot me a message and we can chat, see if we'd make a good team. I also have a new program this year I've launched that is training plans at a lower cost that comes with occasional check ins from me. So if you'd like to get a little bit of support with your training, but don't necessarily think that a full one on one coaching relationship is for you, check that out. If you go to knightonruns.com and click either coaching or training plans up at the top, you can learn all about that. And lastly, just wanted to let you know I'm finally finishing my first ever book. It's going to be called Run Faster Marathons, The Proven Path to PR. Just doing the final editing of it now. It's 99% done. And the more I talk about it, the more likely I actually am to get the darn thing finished and out there. So keep an eye out for that this spring. It's really cool to finally take so many of these ideas I've been working on and put them into physical paper. I've got the proof right here with me, and it looks really, really cool. So can't wait to release that. I hope your run-in's going well, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.